Hello everyone, happy Friday. I do apologize, I'm feeling a little under the weather, so my voice might crack a couple times, and I'm very congested sounding, so bear with me. It's Insta Live on Fry, and it is Audrey Button from Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes. I use the pronoun she, her, hers, and today is our last Friday of June. So I always just like to point out, so it is Pride Month, and while Pride Month is in the month of June, we should be recognizing these important discussions around the LGBTQ plus community every month of the year, every day of the year, every moment of the year. So please keep that in mind after we have our discussion today. So today we're going to be talking about the LGBTQ plus community and sexual violence. If you remember, we talked about human trafficking, dating violence, and then we talked about how to support a friend in an unhealthy relationship for someone who's LGBTQ+, and then now we're talking about sexual violence today. So before we kind of just get started, I just like to give a reminder, that, the things that we'll be discussing may be sensitive to some, so please take care of yourself however you need to. I always like to give a content warning for that. And then another big thing as just a disclaimer is, the views and opinions expressed in this video are not necessarily those of Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes, but of those in the video. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So like I said, please keep this in mind. Yes, it's, almost the end of June, but, we should have these conversations all the time. And this is just a start. So for those conversations if you haven't had them already, okay? And so we'll be talking about how the LGBTQ plus community is impacted by sexual violence. So just to kind of give an idea of the extent of it, I just want to give you some numbers. I know statistics and numbers don't, it's not giving a human element to it, but I like to give those numbers because it gives you the idea of the extent of this, how much it impacts that community. So, just to give an idea, nearly 1 in 10 LGBTQ survivors of intimate partner violence, so that's dating violence, have experienced sexual assault from those partners. So 1 in 10 of them have also experienced dating violence, but also sexual violence from that person. Okay? And about half of transgender people and bisexual women will experience sexual violence at some point in their lifetime. That is a lot. So before I can kind of get into more data and information, I want to point out why, and then we've had this conversation kind of all along, but why is this happening, okay? So, we've talked about this especially the last couple weeks, but LGBTQ plus individuals face higher, rates and are at higher risk of poverty, stigma, I'll say stigma because I can't speak today. I'm not feeling, too wonderful, but, and, they're facing higher levels of stigma and marginalization in society because of their identity. And you also add in being in the LGBTQ plus community, but also being a person of color. And that adds a lot of other things that make it extremely difficult from them. We've talked about getting services or, getting the services they need or even having access to those services, but are facing higher rates of, sexual violence, dating violence, human trafficking because of their higher risk of, poverty, because of homelessness, because of, stigma and marginalization that they face in the community, in our world, in our society. So this is automatically going to put them at higher risk of sexual violence. And a lot of times it's, with sexual violence and dating violence, human trafficking, it's about power and control. And if they feel like they have more power and control over you, that's already going to put you at a higher risk. So, and especially if there's a lack of support, a lack of services or access to services, that will also put them at higher risk as well. And they're just facing higher rates of hate motivated violence, and oftentimes that is in the form of sexual violence. So there's that hypersexualization of LGBTQ plus people. There's a hypersexualization, especially transgender and bisexual individuals, which puts them at higher risk for sexual assault or sexual violence because of this hypersexualization of them. Okay, so especially in relationships. So there's that hypersexualization of LGBTQ plus people and that stigma around LGBTQ plus relationships in general, especially, like I talked about with transgender or bisexual individuals. This can lead to intimate partner violence, which is why we saw that such high numbers of intimate partner violence and sexual violence. Okay, sorry, we had poor connection for a second. So this can stem from, that internalized homophobia, transphobia, shame, and even, when we're adding in the element of people of color, is racism, especially someone who is a person of color and is in the LGBTQ plus community. So there's a lot of layers to that, and that, tends to be why there's this hypersexualization, this internalized hate and violence towards these people in these communities. And so just to give more of an idea of the extent of this, and I know I said about half of transgender and bisexual women, but the exact number, for just bisexual women alone is 46% have been raped, compared to only 17% of straight women ever being raped and 13% of lesbians. So bisexual women have a much higher chance of being sexually assaulted than straight women or lesbians. So that's automatic. They have a 50-50 chance of being a victim of sexual violence or a survivor of sexual violence. So then, just to kind of give more an idea, 22% of bisexual women have been raped by an intimate partner, so a dating partner, compared to 9% of straight women. So that's quite a high number as well. And then talking about gay men, 40% of gay men and 47% of bisexual men have experienced sexual violence other than rape, compared to 21% of straight men. And, talking about transgender individuals, 47%, so that's almost half of transgender people are sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. And then, among specifically transgender, people of color, Native American populations, in terms of transgender individuals, 65% of them have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And then in terms of multiracial transgender individuals, 59% of them will be sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. In Middle Eastern descent transgender individuals, 58% of them will be sexually assaulted or have been sexually assaulted. And, and then Black transgender individuals, 53% of them have or will be sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. And that adds another whole layer. It makes, puts them at higher risk of being sexually assaulted or experiencing some sort of sexual violence. And lastly, I really want to point this out. 48% of bisexual women who are rape survivors experienced their first rape between the ages of 11 and 17 years old. So, that's a lot. It's really heavy information that I just shared with you, but it's really important to recognize. And I know I talked about, over the last couple of weeks, the lack of resources in the community, or, when they do get resources, people being discriminated against because of their identity, or they don't have resources appropriate for them because they do, like LGBTQ plus community and people of color, and everyone just, requires very individualized services, and a lot of times they aren't, or they're not specifically focused towards the needs that they have. And so that's preventing them from getting the services and support that they need, or they're not even getting these services at all, or there's a fear of coming forward to get services or help because they might, of their identity in general, but also because they don't want to be out to people, especially if they're not out yet. and it can cause a lot of challenges for them. So, and I know I've talked about this before, especially how to support a friend who, you know, is experiencing an unhealthy relationship, but also those things are very applicable for how to support someone who's been sexually assaulted. And the first thing is believing them. You know, number one is believing them. And then, you know, after that is providing that support and, you know, obviously taking care of yourself as well, but providing that support, so whether that be going with them to get help that they need, the medical care that they need, mental health help that they need, going to get services from a service provider like Safe Harbors, whatever it may be, you can be as supportive as possible. That can really help a lot, because a lot of times people don't believe them, or they're too scared to come forward or tell somebody. So just always believe them, always support them, let them know that you're there for them. And that is it for today. I know there's a lot of information. Like I said, I can always talk about this forever, but if you have, you know, you want to know a little bit more, you have questions, comments, concerns, you can let me know. You can always comment or message us on our social media. And if you haven't heard yet, we are on TikTok, and we just made our first TikTok video. And as always, if you ever need help or support, or you know someone who might need it, you can always give us a call at our 24-hour hotline, which is 800-247-7273. And you can always go to our website, which is www.shflny.org. So that's it for today. Like I said, this is a conversation that needs to be had every single day of the year, not just the month of June. So, you know, I really appreciate you all for watching this, and I hope you have a good weekend, and just make sure you keep an eye out for our next month's topics, because it's already almost July. I can't believe it. So make sure you check that out. I'll hopefully have that post the beginning of next week. Okay. So with that, thank you so much.